So I can see we've got the majority of our participants here today. So let's welcome you all to this, the first in a series of Spotlight on Surrey events. It's led by Surrey County Council and in partnership with Business South. We've had over 240 registrations for today's event, which will focus on tackling that big issue of the day, leading the fight against COVID-19. We're joined today by major names in the pharmaceutical and life sciences industries, and many, of course, part of a vibrant Surrey-based cluster, and we'll touch on vaccine development and other major interventions today. So just some housekeeping to begin with. Closed captions or subtitles are available. You should see that on your screen now. A reminder that this event is being recorded and will be available to view later. And of course, there's a question and chat function too. So please do get involved. I'll put some of those points to our panel later. And by all means, don't hold back. You can post those questions anytime now throughout the event. On social media, please follow Surrey County Council on LinkedIn and at Twitter on @Surrey News, and use the hashtag Spotlight on Surrey on social media posts throughout this event. Now, before we go to our panel, we're also conducting a poll throughout this event today. The first question I'd like you to consider is on your screens now. You'll see there's a number of answers, and you can, of course, select more than one. That first question, what drives businesses to invest and stay in Surrey? So we have connectivity to London and the world, clusters of similar business networks, skilled workforce, lifestyle and quality of place, and the Surrey brand. And in a few moments, we'll have the results from that survey. So what drives businesses to invest and stay in Surrey? And by far the majority saying connectivity to London and the world with 63%, lifestyle and quality of place coming in second, skilled workforce, clusters of similar business networks, and finally the Surrey brand. And we'll be having more poll questions throughout today's event. So to start with today, I'd like to invite Tim Oliver, the leader of Surrey County Council, for an overview on its role and ambitions as we look to move beyond the impact of the pandemic. As many of you will know, Tim has an extensive background in business, charities, education, and local government. He also chairs Surrey Heartland's Integrated Care System Board with a focus on improving health and social care. Tim, the floor is yours.
Sir, thank you very much, and good afternoon, everybody. So can I start by, first of all, thanking everyone for being able to join the event. I think it promises to be a very interesting discussion on how Surrey is leading the post-pandemic recovery. Surrey enjoys multiple advantages that makes it an obvious choice for companies involved in cutting-edge research and development to base themselves here. Not only do we have a highly skilled population, we also have amazing research and development facilities, including world-class universities. There is easy access to global trading through proximity to Heathrow and Gatwick airports, and of course, major port facilities along the south coast like Southampton and Portsmouth, as well as excellent transport links into London and to the rest of the country via the road and rail networks. And as you've just identified, that's hugely important for the county of Surrey. So I believe that business can and should have confidence and faith that they have a partner in Surrey County Council who will always work closely with them, will help create the right conditions for business and indeed provide stability and certainty during these really challenging times. Today, we're going to focus on the pharma tech, which is one particular area where Surrey excels and which provides the highly skilled jobs our residents are looking for. As we've seen with the COVID-19 vaccine program, and indeed all the other initiatives the sector is engaged in, they are at the very cutting edge of research and science. That's what we want people to think of when they think of Surrey. But equally, there's a vast range of other sectors that Surrey is home to, including automotive, where the companies based here are developing the next generation of green and autonomous vehicles, financial services, which will play a key role in the next phase of the UK's post-Brexit future. And the creative industries too, providing opportunities in areas like film, television and marketing, and tackling the challenges we face in the digital age. So across the council, we're seeking to listen to all the various parties and understand their particular challenges and opportunities so we can link together with other organisations in the most appropriate way. We're also working to showcase all the various activities and opportunities that exist through things like the Spotlight on Surrey series of events. In all of this, I'm keen that Surrey County Council also takes the opportunity to collaborate with partners about ways that we can improve the offering that Surrey can make. We're using our Surrey Growth Board as a way of bringing together representatives from business, academia, and frontline providers to take advantage of those opportunities. As well as our Surrey Business Leadership Forum, which includes representatives from Pfizer, but also Hyundai, McLaren, Pinewood Group, and indeed a number of other representatives of our multinational company base. I very much hope this engagement between businesses of all sizes continues to develop and grow, and that Surrey's own homegrown companies are able to benefit from the opportunity to work closely with large and multinational companies. Ultimately, I hope that this is the start of seeing more companies from Surrey reaching out to new global markets, taking advantage of the connectivity to the world that we have on offer, and maybe even growing into the next Pfizer. And I believe that this work will lead to new opportunities for our residents, with better jobs and increased prospects that continue to improve standards of living and prosperity. We absolutely want Surrey to be renowned the world over for its innovation and research as we confront new challenges in the years ahead. I think it will be good to see further opportunities created for local residents as a result of these events, whether those are new jobs, new products like medicines, cars, or movies. We know that there is a close connection between a sustainable and strong local economy and health and wellbeing outcomes. And that is why 2 of the 4 key priorities for Surrey County Council over the coming months and indeed years, along with enabling a greener future and empowering our communities, which is key to delivering our 2030 vision, which is that no one is left behind. But the County Council is just one part of the whole ecosystem. And if anything, this pandemic has demonstrated the real strength of true partnership working, whether that's local government, the health system, business, or the voluntary community and faith sectors. We must not forget that as we start to look forward to the end of this dreadful virus, that we must use that experience to build bridges across those organisations if we are to deliver those long-term benefits. And finally, I want us to renew our sense of pride in our county, for people to be able to look at something, recognise the role that Surrey played in that development, and feel a connection with us, with it, that makes us proud. Indeed, this is not about pitting one region against another, but rather enabling each region to take more control of its own destiny and grow its economy as it sees fit. I know that everyone here today sees that opportunity, and I hope that we will also see that we're keen to step up as a county council to work with business, with the government, and with all our other partners to build on the fantastic base that we have here in Surrey. Thank you.
Tim, thank you very much today. We're now turning from the local authority to how government is helping business lead the COVID recovery. Our second speaker was elected Conservative MP for Spelthorne in 2010. The Right Honourable Kwasi Kwarteng is Secretary of State at the Department of Business, Energy, Industrial Strategy. Let's turn now to measures the government has in place and the opportunities as the country looks to recover from COVID. Kwasi, over to you.
Thank you very much, Alistair. And I just wanted to say, I'm speaking in 2 capacities. As you pointed out, I've been Member of Parliament for Spelthorne since 2010. That's nearly 11 years now. And of course, only 5 weeks ago, I had the honor of being appointed Secretary of State for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy. So clearly with those two hats, what you're talking about in terms of the opportunity, the great potential and great achievement as well. I mean, let's not forget that of Surrey is something that's of direct interest to me. And I think Tim has shown great leadership in the time that he's been a leader. I think he's shown a real vision. And I was very pleased to hear him articulate some of that vision when I just joined 5 minutes ago. I think one of the things that he said was he talked about research and development. And I think research and development, innovation is a key aspect of what we're trying to do here in Bays. I'm very pleased to be heading a department in which innovation, and one of the first things I did when I came in post was to commission an innovation strategy. We really need to bottom out what we're doing with innovation. I think the vaccine rollout and what happened showed how strong we can be in terms of innovating. And I'll just say a few words about that. And then I can talk about the wider COVID support, which is my immediate priority as business and energy secretary. What happened, I think, with the vaccine was a great illustration of Britain's strengths as a science superpower. What happened March 2020, the COVID-19 crisis came upon us. A vaccine was a long way away. And what we managed to do was galvanize our scientific base to really solve the problem in terms of working out how a vaccine would work. That was great intellectual work, great scientific work, which we then managed to convert through our manufacturing base into a product. We produced millions of units, we produced millions of vaccine doses, which we then managed to distribute largely very effectively. I think as of today, we've vaccinated something like 13 million people of our people. Now, all of this happened within about 10 months. And I think it will be studied for years to come as an example of British innovation at its best. So I think that the vaccine rollout, which is happening today, now, is a great example of what we can achieve in terms of science, research, actually making a meaningful impact on millions of people's lives. Broadly, I think the government department I head, and also with my friend Rishi Sunak, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, we've intervened in the economy in a way that I think has been unprecedented. I think something like £280 billion of support in the form of loans, in the form of the furlough scheme, in the form of other interventions has been provided. And all the businesses I've spoken to, the business leaders, have actually expressed some degree of gratitude is the wrong word, but appreciation of our efforts in that area. What I would say is that in terms of my priorities as a business secretary, is that we have to work to have a long-term plan for growth. That's something which I'm working very closely with the Treasury with. And also, I think Tim touched upon this, the net zero agenda, the decarbonisation agenda, I think is very, very important, clearly a top priority. And along with the innovation agenda, which I've just talked about, these are ways in which, and we're supporting research. I mean, we've got a great university in Surrey, which is at the cutting edge of a lot of science and technological research. These are the ways in which government, I think, can play a dynamic role in trying to shape the economy. However, having said that, I think government does have a role to play. As a Surrey MP, as an MP for Spelthorne over this time, nothing has made more of an impression on me than the individual efforts of wealth creators, often in small businesses, sometimes in family businesses, and sometimes with groups of people, small groups of people. These wealth creators have really driven huge progress, not only in Surrey, but across the country over decades. And any Surrey MP, any person who's plugged into what goes on in the county, is fully conscious of the individual talents, the energies, and create a spirit of creative enterprise. And I don't think any government can, in this country, forget those individual efforts. I mean, the greatest compliment that anyone ever paid Britain, arguably, was Napoleon when he said that England, he said, I mean, this is politically correct days. I mean, he meant Britain, of course, but England is a nation of shopkeepers. And he obviously meant that as an insult, but actually it's a great compliment because it shows that kind of entrepreneurial drive, often in a very localized way. And I think that's something which I am thinking of ways of fostering that spirit. I know that Tim is very interested in fostering that and realizes, as many of you do, that that's really the strength of the county. It's a very attractive county. It's a very successful county in many ways. And I think I wouldn't want ever to dampen that spirit of individual enterprise. And frankly, this is a totally remarkable period in terms of the government intervening in the economy, providing support. But as I said in a Daily Telegraph interview a couple of weeks ago, we can't simply spend our way to prosperity. And if that were the case, the Soviet Union would still be with us. We have to rely on private enterprise, ultimately, to sustain the wealth creation upon which our public services depend. You can't have good public services without a strong private sector. That's something that the Prime Minister always stresses. And I, in my capacity as business secretary, will always come back to. So yes, we have intervened. Yes, we can provide support. But what we have to do is try and enable the culture and the ecosystem under which private enterprise, private wealth creation can be sustained. And I know that's very much at the heart of Tim's vision for the county. I'm very sorry that I can't stay longer. I think I had agreed to this event perhaps even before I was appointed. And as you'll appreciate, my diary is very constrained at the moment in my first couple of months, certainly in this role. But thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. And it was a great honor and privilege for me to be able to address this meeting today. Thank you.
Kwasi Kwarteng, thank you so much for the government's response to COVID. Now to someone right at the heart of the recovery. Pfizer needs little introduction as its vaccine, the first to be approved in the UK, has been leading the fight against COVID-19. Now, Ben Osborne is MD of Pfizer UK and also sits on the Association of the British Pharmaceutical Industry Board, as well as supporting a number of committees within government and the NHS. Ben, thank you so much for joining us today on Spotlight on Surrey. Excellent. Thanks, Alistair.
So yeah, I mean, good afternoon, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be with you here today, and the distinguished audience is testament to what we believe Surrey really has to offer. We know it's home to some of the UK's largest employers, with a renowned university and academia base and a leading edge healthcare system. And were it not for these unusual times, I'd be joining you from our Walton site in Tadworth, our UK headquarters, where over 700 of our 2,500 UK colleagues are based. But as we all know well, these are not normal times. And as we look to the future and beyond this pandemic, I want to talk today about what I believe will really get us there. And for me, it's the power of the public-private partnership. And I'll begin by explaining a little bit about Pfizer's proud heritage and partnership with Surrey and the wider UK, which provides such a strong foundation. I'll go on to talk about this partnership and how it can be deepened to the benefit of patients, our local communities and business, and then conclude with talking about the example we just heard from the Secretary of State about our efforts at Pfizer to tackle COVID-19, where the public-private partnership could not be clearer. But first, our commitment to the local area. As a proud resident of Cranley in Surrey, there's no better end to the day for me than putting on my running shoes and heading out to the beautiful Surrey Hills behind me. And as a global company with a 170-year heritage, Pfizer's roots also run deep here in Surrey. Our close links began over 2 decades ago with the opening of our Walton site, which was a £75 million investment in the area. And we're lucky to have more than 300 acres of outstanding natural beauty on our doorstep. And as one of the most successful and productive areas for business in the UK, Surrey is such an ideal location, not just for Pfizer, but for many others, as we've already heard. Its top performing local economy contributes over 40 billion GVA per annum. And it's also a county that we recognise as one as embracing innovation through its research base, in particular through the University of Surrey and Royal Holloway, University of London. And of course, it's home to so many tech-driven organisations that really are genuinely at the forefront of science and innovation today. From the 5G Innovation Centre in Guildford and the Pirbright Institute to the Mullard Space Science Laboratory near Dorking, just a few miles away, in fact, from our own site. And it's this ecosystem that provides such incredible opportunity for learning and collaboration across our sectors, attracting talent, helping to boost links to science clusters, not just across the UK, but the wider world. And from a life science perspective, Surrey has over 58,000 people employed in life sciences. That's a quarter of the industry nationally. And it's this simple statistic that really speaks to me about Surrey's competitive advantage. It was therefore no surprise to see the recent Surrey Future Economy Commission, chaired by Lord Hammond, highlight the life science sector as a critical strength for today and tomorrow. So what can we do to really make this a reality? What can we do to bring this vision to life? And this brings me to my second point about deepening the links with our local community, especially our young people. As a community, Pfizer's purpose is to bring breakthroughs that change patients' lives. And what truly brings that purpose to life is our commitment to making a positive impact in the communities in which we live and work beyond our life-saving medicines and vaccines. And it's something that I'm personally really passionate about. I'm proud of our long-lasting partnerships with local organisations right across Surrey. The pandemic, as we know, has impacted all of our communities, and unfortunately, many of the charities and organisations providing vital services. And I'm proud that Pfizer has provided much needed support through our dedicated COVID fund. In fact, we've donated over £200,000 to charities alone in Surrey. Supporting the great work of the local community fund for Reigate and Banstead, Stripey Stork, East Surrey YMCA, St John's, and many of the local food banks, we really have tried to step up during this time. But I'm also proud of how our colleagues have stepped up. So we've given all of our colleagues paid volunteering leave over the last 12 months to equip older people with digital skills to stay connected as part of a befriending programme with business in the community. Many of our medics, pharmacists and other healthcare professionals have actually returned to the NHS front line, again on a fully paid basis by Pfizer to volunteer their support. But even beyond before this pandemic, we built strong partnerships to inspire the next generation of talent. With our STEM initiatives like the Science in a Box programme, colleagues are helping school children discover the joy of science. Over the last 2 academic years, we've reached over 13,000 school children. And we've worked with many fantastic partners across Surrey to do this, including local schools, Ashcombe, Downsend, Leatherhead and Reeds. And another one of our school initiatives, Superbugs Join the Fight, teaches primary school and early secondary students about antimicrobial resistance, about vaccination, viruses and pandemics. And through this, we've reached over 6,000 pupils in Surrey just in the last 24 months. Of course, all of this has been done in a virtual world, but there's never been a better time to inspire future leaders and budding UK scientists. We're putting in place a new initiative with the Social Mobility Foundation, enabling Pfizer and colleagues to mentor young people from low-income backgrounds. And we're also proud of our work experience, our apprenticeships and our undergrads. In fact, many of our 50 apprentices across a range of disciplines are based here in Surrey, in Walton Oaks, as are our 45 or so undergrads currently completing their year in industry. And we'll soon begin recruiting our next intake virtually, working closely with our universities across the area to attract their talent. Last July, I had the pleasure of working with 40 Year 10 and 12 students from across 9 Surrey schools who joined us on a new 2-week work experience programme. And it's really inspiring for me and my colleagues, and a huge joy to witness the enthusiasm, the passion, and the new ideas they bring to our work. And developing their skills is key for me and our organisation at Pfizer to make sure we've got the talent pipeline of the future, that we can continue to make major breakthroughs that change patients' lives right across the globe. And despite this pandemic, we're continuing to recruit through virtual ways of and processes. And we've got a really strong commitment to diversity and social inclusion, and to bringing in talent from all parts of Surrey to cover the variety of roles at all different levels across our business. Inspiring that next generation is so important, because it's really going to help us tackle the major challenges of the future. And I don't think we could have a clearer illustration of the power of the life science industry than in tackling COVID-19. Which brings me to my final point in terms of our partnership in response to COVID-19. In just 10 months, we leveraged Pfizer's global capabilities in vaccine development, our manufacturing and distribution to quickly manufacture and supply a COVID-19 vaccine. Together with our partner BioNTech, we worked at an unprecedented pace to bring a vaccine to the world in less than a year while preserving the highest safety standards. And I'm really pleased to say that more than 100 colleagues at our Walton Oaks site have played a key role in these efforts. Our experienced regulatory and drug safety colleagues have been working closely with regulators, not just here in the UK, but across the globe, to ensure the smooth and timely review of the clinical data and manufacturing data. Our supply chain colleagues have been working tirelessly from our facilities in Perth, Belgium, and directly from here in the UK with the government, with the Secretary of State's team, in fact, to ensure the smooth delivery of the vaccine to the UK. Our medical colleagues and those who support medical information on our customer care lines are working tirelessly every day to provide expertise and information that is so vital. And to see the UK be the first country to approve the vaccine was just an incredible moment, and not least then for the NHS to be the first in the world to start bringing this to our patients. It's one of immense pride for me. And we're continuing to work closely with the government as the vaccination programme really ramps up. In fact, a couple of weeks ago, I was lucky enough to visit my local vaccination centre here in Cranley and witness firsthand how hard our NHS and volunteers are working. In fact, we've got many colleagues supporting the rollout at their local vaccination centres right across Surrey. And it's really inspiring for all of us at Pfizer to see the impact our colleagues and our work, our innovation and science is having across the UK at this important time. And it's even added a new topic of conversation down at the local butchers in Cranley as I pop in on a Saturday, as they've wanted their weekend updates on where we're at. So great progress to report this weekend for sure. But what now? Well, when times are challenging, it's really difficult to turn our attention to the future. It may sound like a tough ask, but it is so important that we do so. We've got much to draw on. There are huge learnings from this pandemic experience, as we've already heard, in fact, this afternoon. And to build back better for the next normal, we have to use the power of the public-private partnership. We knew from the very beginning of the COVID crisis that it would take both the power of science and the power of collaboration to defeat this. We've seen the very best of what science can achieve, and within a decade's worth of innovation, achieved in less than a year. In fact, it was just 260 days from starting this collaboration to regulation in the UK. And the progress of vaccines is the ultimate proof of what we can achieve in working together for a shared common goal for the UK. United across industry, government, and the NHS, guided by a clear strategic focus, underpinned by an open and transparent communication. So the choice from my perspective we now have is as follows. Will we apply what we've learned to the other big health challenges we face, cancer, Alzheimer's, cardiovascular disease? Or will we go back to the old arguments, the old ways of working? I believe we must harness this moment to reposition the relationship between health, healthcare and the economy, recognising the pivotal role that health plays to our national prosperity. We must build a resilient NHS, one based on prevention at its core. And we must work to ensure that the NHS is able to adopt and be a beacon of innovation in the future. We've built a truly special relationship across government, industry and the NHS, and indeed our local communities. And throughout COVID, we've seen what this can look like at its very best. It's now down to all of us coming together to carry this momentum forward, fostering the thriving life sciences and tech infrastructure, healthcare across Surrey and the UK and beyond. And we can start to do that right now. Thank you.
Ben Osborne from Pfizer UK, a real pleasure to have you take part in today's event. I know that you're extremely busy, so thank you very much. Now, we were hoping to be joined by Jeremy Hunt, MP for South West Surrey. Unfortunately, he's had a minor accident and is receiving treatment this afternoon, so we of course wish him a speedy recovery. So let's return now to the poll that we've been conducting today. Question number 2, which should appear on your screens now. What does the pharmaceutical and life science cluster in Surrey need to thrive? Better local networks, links to international trade networks, links to universities and specialist business support, or nothing? And those results coming through now. What does the pharmaceutical and life science cluster in Surrey need to thrive? And there we have it, links to universities coming up top, shortly followed by links to international trade networks. And of course, specialist business support and better local networks, all important too. Well, it's been a particularly challenging year for international travel. And of course, that continues. Let's turn now to Gatwick Airport and hear how it's coping with COVID-19, the challenges, the opportunities, and the future of air travel. Stuart Wingate is the Gatwick Airport CEO and has been since December 2009 and has previously held senior management roles at several other airports, as well as being MD at Stansted. Stuart, over to you.
Thanks, Alistair, and thanks for the opportunity to speak this afternoon. It's really quite inspirational to hear Ben talk about Pfizer's success. And one thing's for certain, I think I speak not only for Gatwick, but for the aviation sector as a whole, including colleagues from Heathrow. Probably the one shining light that I think we've all had over the last few months was the initial news of the success of the Pfizer vaccine. And certainly our entire sector is pinning its hopes for the future on the successful rollout of the various different vaccines that are now available. So hopefully I speak for everybody on the call, but I thought it was a great presentation from Ben, and certainly we wish him every success. In terms of Gatwick, today I'll just take you through some of the really harsh impacts that COVID has had upon our business. I'll then talk a little bit about some of the measures that we've put in place and some of the collaborations that we have done with various different stakeholders, including the National Health Service. And then I'll just finish off, hopefully, with a note of optimism about the future, not only the short-term future, but also the longer-term future. So let's start with the impacts of COVID on Gatwick, but frankly, on our aviation sector as a whole. If we go to the next slide, I'll start by just reflecting back to 2019. I would describe 2019 as an absolute record-breaking year for Gatwick, on the back of 10 successive record-breaking years when you measure the business from a growth perspective. So in 2019, we were going gangbusters. We saw over 46.5 million passengers use the airport. We were connecting residents of Sussex and Surrey and Kent and further afield to over 230 different global destinations. And we were contributing over £5.3 billion to the local economy year in, year out. So things were looking very, very good in 2019. And certainly in the early weeks of 2020, our full expectation was that we would grow further. If we go to the next slide, this slide brings us down to earth with a bump. What you can see here at the top of the chart is the monthly passenger volumes that we had been seeing in 2019. And on the bottom of the chart, very starkly, you can see how COVID has devastated the aviation sector as a whole, and certainly has had a dramatic impact at Gatwick. You can see on the bottom of the chart that the passenger volumes, as we look forward to the immediate weeks through January, February, and March, are very low indeed, and that we really are banking on the success of the vaccinations rollout on reopening our sector as a whole. If we go to the next slide, you'll see how this is really translated into the actions that we've had to take to hold on to our cash in our fight for survival. What this slide is showing you is the level of capital investment that our investors have made in the airport over the last 10 years or so. So you can see that over the last 10 years or so, the average capital investment, private investment at the airport has been about £230 million per annum. So investing about £1 million every working day in keeping the facilities operational, putting in new services, and indeed building a bigger and a stronger airport. To the right-hand side of the chart, you can see in the year ended March 21 and the year ended March 22, the dash boxes, what we expected to invest in this 2-year period. A total of about £456 million. With the impact of COVID, we've had to dramatically reduce that investment, which has big implications for the supply chain. And over that 2-year period, we now intend to invest somewhere of the order of about £100 million. Of course, there's a big incentive on us to get our sector open back up again and to get back to the levels of investment that we had previously. If we go to the next slide, you'll also see here the impact that it's had on employees of the airport. Pre-COVID, Gatwick employed as a campus about 25,000 people. Today, we believe that about 10 to 15,000 people remain in employment, although a significant number of that workforce continues to be furloughed at the airport. If I look at the airport business, so the business that I'm accountable for, currently we have a staff of just over 1,800 people. This time last year, we had a staff of 3,300 people, but we're only using about 600 of our remaining staff to actually maintain the operation. The remainder of our staff are furloughed, and for that we're very grateful for the government support, because that's really helping us to maintain as many jobs as possible and to maintain a core capability at the airport. If we flick forward, I'll maybe just reflect on some of the things that we've had to put in place to actually cope with COVID from an operational perspective, and some of the ways in which we've helped the community. So moving to the next slide, as you would expect, sanitation has been a key focus area for us, and communication, digital communication, as well as physical communication at the airport. For those people who have gone through the airport, it's a very different experience today to the ones that you'd be used to. So lots of hand sanitation sites, lots of cleaning activity, lots of hand washing facilities, and lots of signage encouraging people to wear face coverings to protect one another. On the next slide is a European first, which is something that we implemented in our security area. Obviously, with the security precautions, everybody goes through the security area using the security trays to put their personal belongings in. and that's a key touch point through the passenger journey. So we implemented UV facilities, which basically ensure that all of the security trays that are being used are sanitized every time that they are used to protect our staff, but also to protect passengers as they travel through the airport. On the next slide, I talk a little bit here about how we've actually had our staff step up to help the national response. One of the things we're very proud of at Gatwick, of our staff, is the fact that we've remained open throughout the crisis. That's enabled us to repatriate passengers and citizens during the various different lockdowns, as well as bring in critical cargo, particularly medical supplies, to be used in the National Health Service. And we fully intend to remain open throughout the current lockdowns. Of course, we have encouraged our staff who are on furlough to support their local communities and use their time meaningfully. And we've also been hosting an NHS test facility, COVID test facility, from April time of last year. And that facility has been used day in, day out, and continues to be used in one of our long stay car parks. On the next slide, you'll see that we have also put in place test facilities that are available for passengers to use. The facilities were open in November time of last year. They can be used for pre or post-arrival testing, which is obviously very applicable today. And they do use the government-approved PCR swab tests, with results coming back within 24 hours. So certainly as we unlock the sector in the coming weeks and months, we expect to see these facilities heavily utilised. And specifically, these are facilities which are made available privately, not taking capacity from the NHS, and the tests for the passengers cost £60 at the facilities that we've put in place. And if we move forward, what we're also doing at Gatwick is to offer to the government the use of the entire South Terminal as a mass vaccination centre. We estimate that should this offer be acceptable, we could see somewhere of the order of 12,000 people per day vaccinated in the South Terminal facilities. Of course, we're doing this voluntarily, not seeking to make any profit from the use of the facilities. And the general concept is that the 3 multi-storey car parks and the check-in halls of the South Terminal could be utilised to really ramp up the vaccination effort as and when additional supplies of vaccinations are available. We could do this for a number of months. So this offer has been made. It's currently being considered by the government and by the NHS teams, and we stand ready to support the effort. So if we move on, now let's take a little look at the future. On the next slide, we talk about our immediate requests and asks of government if the current lockdowns for international travel continue. These are asks not just from Gatwick, but from the aviation sector as a whole. And essentially, we're having a dialogue with government ahead of the budget to specifically ask for the extension of the CCFF business loans, to ask for the extension of the furlough scheme for our sector if we continue to be locked down, and also requesting specific help for full business rates relief, as well as waivers on some of the regulatory fees that we pay, for example, to the Civil Aviation Authority. So they're the very short-term asks that we have of government. But if we flip to the next slide, our key ask of government is to work with industry to set out a roadmap at the right time to communicate to the population at large how travel will emerge from the lockdown. And the sorts of things that we'd like to see government consider, clearly the use of testing, the use of vaccine passports, and also the use of travel corridors to facilitate travel as early as this summer. So this is our number one priority that we are engaged with government on as we speak today. Should we be successful on the next slide, you can see that we're very, very confident that there is strong demand for airlines to fly to and from Gatwick, even in this summer. So if we look at the key airlines at Gatwick, EasyJet have declared their intentions that so long as the markets open up this summer, they'll deploy 71 aircraft at Gatwick in the summer. That will be their biggest ever fleet deployment of aircraft at Gatwick. So a lot of confidence from our biggest carrier. I'm delighted to say that British Airways are not only selling long-haul tickets, but also they're selling an extensive number of short-haul tickets as well. So we're fully expecting to see British Airways return to the airport. And whilst Norwegian won't fly long-haul, they will indeed be flying significant passenger volumes short-haul. And we have some new entrants to tell you about. Wizz Air setting up new services to Gatwick in 2020 and looking to expand in 2021. And also JetBlue looking to put services in transatlantic, serving a number of US airports. So if we can get the sector open, we're very sure that we'll recover quite quickly. And then my final slide really looks to the more medium and longer term. Many people observing the call today will be aware of the fact that Gatwick has been progressing with plans to get the planning permission to routinely use our existing northern runway or standby runway. Certainly during the course of this year, despite the current lockdowns, we will be continuing work on this project, and certainly we'll be looking to take that forward through the planning process. We'll be publicly consulting on this later in the year, with a view to getting a planning permission by the mid-2020s and having the scheme delivered, privately funded, by the late 2020s. So we've still got a lot of optimism about the strength not only of Gatwick but our surrounding area, including Surrey, of course, for the medium and the longer term future. So I'll pause there, and I'll be very happy to take questions later in the agenda.
Stuart, thank you. A real insight there on the impact at Gatwick, and of course your hopes for the future, and we wish you well with that. We're going to hear the perspective from one of our hospitals now and find out how Surrey businesses can work with hospitals. Suzanne Rankin is the CEO of Ashford and St Peter's. Her focus has been on delivering the right culture and the highest quality care and treatment. Most recently, Suzanne has been deployed to the Nightingale Hospital programme and has since then been appointed to NHS Test and Trace as the National Director for COVID Containment before returning to the Trust in the autumn. We know you're extremely busy, Suzanne, so thank you very much for your time today at Spotlight on Surrey. Suzanne, we need you to turn your mic on, please.
Okay, let's do that. Thank you, Alistair. Really an enormous privilege to be here with you all this afternoon and share some of our story amongst such illustrious other speakers. So I hope that works. Yeah, so this is just give you a little bit of our context. From this slide, you can see we're a big organisation. We treat over 500,000 patients a year. I've got 4,000 members of the team across at least 3 sites. Our 2 big sites are on the map there, St Peter's and Ashford. Many of you will be familiar with those locations. And importantly, we spend over now £350 million a year of taxpayers' money, your money and my money, on delivering the care that we give. Now, this slide predates COVID, but I'm sure you're all familiar with the story this slide shares. You know, the NHS is known to have had a sustainability and resilience challenges. Ben referred to some of those as we move forward from this crisis. And the same was true for my organisation. And we spent some time thinking about, well, what is our role in recovering the sustainability and resilience of both our organisation, the care we deliver, and very importantly, our people, whilst at the same time ensuring that we spend the taxpayers' pound very carefully and thoughtfully. So we put together a strategy. This is my strategy here. All chief executives have one of these, don't they? But what I'd like to draw your attention to is the strategic objective on the far right-hand side of the slide, collaborate. So we purposefully set ourselves the objective to collaborate with partners in order to ensure we could deliver great care and be sustainable for the communities we serve. And the mission statement at the bottom right-hand slide there confirms that ambition. So we said about, well, how do you turn an NHS institution with that strategy? How do you make that real? And we came across the Health Foundation's definition of an anchor institution. I'm sure many of you are familiar with this, but fundamentally what it describes is a symbiotic relationship between a big, often public sector organisation and the well-being of the local population, symbiotic in the sense that both partners in that relationship, their sustainability and well-being are intimately connected. And it's clear to see that, you know, if my local population are stressed and unwell, have challenges, sometimes what we call the diseases of despair brought about by unemployment, poor housing and so on, then they often place, and understandably so, demands on a healthcare system which is already stretched, may be operating at costs that are unaffordable, creating a large amount of carbon footprint, and in my case, spending a great deal of money and a lot of time traveling the world to seek members of the healthcare professional team. And so we started to think about, well, how can we change our approach and at the same time improve the health and well-being of our local community? And we went looking, as you do, for experts in the field, and we formed a relationship with Lord Andrew Mawson. Some of you might be familiar with his work, particularly in Bromley by Bow. He heads up an organisation, he's a social entrepreneur called Well North Enterprises. And what you can see here is one of his colleagues engaging with my team inside the hospital, pre-COVID days, having a conversation. What would you like to see? How would you like to see the organisation develop and connect with our local community? What would success look like for you? And one of the things that came out of that engagement was that we needed to form a relationship with our local community. For those of you who know, particularly St. Peter's, my big hospital, which has got all the exciting front end stuff for patients, is on a big roundabout, essentially by the M25. It's not really very well connected with the community. So we set about forming a relationship, and these are some photographs from our very first community day, the summer before COVID hit. And what you can see there is lots of happy, smiley faces. We opened our doors, shared our services, provided training, talked to people about recruitment and opportunities for career in the NHS. And we weren't sure if anybody would come, but actually hundreds of people came and had a really great day. And what my team found was that by forming that relationship and getting to know our local community, they really enjoyed it. It filled our well of resilience that day. And just as well, because quite soon afterwards, this was our reality. This slide gives you our current position. So since last March, we have treated 1,517 COVID patients, and really sadly, 420 of those patients, including 4 of my own team, have succumbed. On the right-hand side, you can see some of the amazing people that contributed to the care for those patients, doing what they do best, smiling and carrying on and doing an amazing job. And at the bottom there, you can see, I think it's Seema Katecha from the BBC, who came to video our report, nationally made the news at 10, our blue light serenade with our partners from the emergency services on a Clap for Carers evening. Now, the important thing about that was it wasn't really about clapping for us. It was really, we wanted to celebrate all of the contribution that was being made. And I think we did that wonderfully. I think this is the ultimate strapline, actually. I think the government have done a great job. They've set it out for us really clearly in this direction, essentially, that we've been given. Stay at home, protect the NHS in order that it can save your life. And I think, you know, it's beautifully articulated there. It's really clear. The public have engaged with it and understood it. And I think it's done my work for me in many ways. This is just a couple of photos of how the community took care of us. So we were really well supported. A couple of things there on that slide. You've got a nurse there modelling an amazing visor. That visor is the product of a collaboration with a very famous sports car company who didn't really want to do a lot of publicity around it, but it's very local to St. Peter's. And a very speedy collaboration led to a very robust supply of those visors to keep my team safe and support the care we were delivering. Another example, you can see the Countess of Wessex there delivering fruit and vegetables so that Nourish Our Nurses charity could support my team, because many of us didn't leave the hospital for quite some time. And it felt like a very long time some days. And Project Wingman, this is a group of amazing flight crew who've come together. They come on site, they've set up a first-class lounge on my site. They're furloughed, most of them, and they are delivering luxurious pampering to my team, which is great. We know that we're really lucky. We've got a job, a reliable income, and the great support of the community. So it's been important for us through this to consider what is our reciprocation. So we formed a relationship with Stanwell Food Bank. You can see there, it looks like an empty box, which is rather a shame in the picture because actually we've collected an enormous amount of food for the food bank. We're thinking about how to expand the use of our charity. I'd very much like to see that supporting, for example, respite care for young carers in our local community, and we're thinking of other ways, and I'd be interested to hear from participants how else you think we can connect with and provide a reciprocation for the support we've had. This is a really important partnership. Bartlett and Mitchell, we came together. Obviously, I had a very big, facility, a restaurant, not socially distanced. Teams were too busy in the PPE to get down from the wards. So very rapidly, we put this together. We've now got brilliant modern facilities. The screenshot in the middle is the app, which all my team have access to. They can click and collect, no need to sit or even to disrobe if that's what you can send a colleague down. And the quality actually of what we've been able to achieve there is way beyond anything I would have anticipated pre-COVID, working through the traditional route. So this is a local company. And what's really great about it is that some of their team were furloughed, and then we've been able to provide employment to those members of our local community. This is our vaccination hub. So big shout out to Ben and his team at Pfizer-BioNTech. We opened our hub 3 weeks ago and we have given 10,000 doses so far, first doses. Absolutely incredible. And this again is the result of a huge set of partnerships you can see described on the screen there. So we have got my own team on the left-hand side of the screen there. You can see a gentleman with a mask on. His name is Mr. David Elliot. He's a very experienced orthopedic surgeon who's worked in my organisation for 26 years. He says the work he's doing in the hub to give people their vaccines is the most inspirational, most satisfying work he's done in his long and illustrious career in the NHS, and that's really saying something. We've got members of aircrew, furloughed aircrew from Virgin and British Airways on our team, providing them with new skills, new opportunities for development, alongside exposing some of their really great skill sets to my team. Amazing. And then we've been able to offer employment to members of the local community who've either lost their jobs sadly or been furloughed. And so we've got this great blended team delivering this amazing thing. And I couldn't be more proud really to have been able to be a part of both delivering care through the crisis and now delivering, as you've all said already, the light at the end of our tunnel. We do a lot of work. We're a very research active organisation, and I've just listed a couple of things on the slide there. So we've clearly participated in the REACT study. This is the real-time assessment of community transition, the SIREN study, which is looking to see whether you develop immunity after an initial infection to a new infection. The BRAIN study, this is a DNA database. This is in partnership with Royal Holloway University. And most recently, we've just launched the Sanitized Sanitized nasal spray trial. And I think if the slide were to work, you'd be able to see a little footage from ITV News there. It's on our Twitter. And this is a great trial that's trialing a nasal spray which is hoped to kill the virus in your nasal passages, prevent incubation and spread to your lungs. And it may well be that we'll all have the nasal spray in our pocket alongside having had the vaccine potentially, and we might regularly spray with the spray as a preventative measure. We're very optimistic about that trial. That trial's in partnership with Sanitized Research and Development Corps based in Vancouver. This is a really important piece of work. We've been asked by NHS Test and Trace to set up the first Lighthouse Laboratory. As you can see on the bottom of the slide there, the organisations there, NHS organisations, run something called the Berkshire and Surrey Pathology Services. And we are in the process of mobilising the Lighthouse Lab, so it's not yet fully authorised. The thing I wanted to say about this was that we've done this with a really strong collaboration with the Pirbright Institute. I'm sure you're all familiar with that illustrious organisation, and they have provided us with an enormous amount of biomedical staff to help staff this. Colleagues are coming on secondment. They have provided training facilities because we've had to build the lab, so it hasn't always been available in the early days for training purposes. And you know, this lab is going to be able to deliver 40,000 PCR test results every 24 hours once we get going, which we hope will be very soon. Quite an extraordinary effort on top of everything else that all of those organisations have been doing. I needed to find ways to communicate with my team effectively. Really important at times like this. People get worried and anxious about what's going on. So we have formed a partnership with this company called Rialto. They've provided as a kind of a Facebook platform. Most of my team are under 30, frankly, and they're very familiar with this kind of technology. And it's enabled me to communicate rapidly and effectively. And the data that we will accrue will give us a sense of what's interesting to my team and what else they want, and we're able to communicate all sorts of things. It's been a really great initiative through this crisis. This is another fantastic initiative. This is the Riverbourne Club in Chertsey. What we did was we moved all our outpatient physiotherapy services, oh sorry, that's my finger, out of the hospital. Clearly we don't want lots of members of the public and patients there if we can help it. So we've moved this service. This is a private gym in partnership with the borough, and we've moved all the outpatient team, all the service there. The facilities are phenomenal, way better than anything I've got in the hospital. My team love working there, the patients love going there, and actually what we've had fed back from the patients is that they have joined the gym, which is great for the business, for the gym, and are actually participating in other activities offered in the gym, cinema evenings, wine evenings, so on. That's the little cafe in the bottom there. Clearly that's not happening at the moment, but what my patient said to me was this didn't only sort out their dodgy knee, this was brilliant for their social life, addressing social isolation and connecting them up with other members of the local community. So we're going to be doing a lot more of that in the future. I'm not going to dwell on this slide. It's a busy slide, but it just kind of gives you a sense of all the things we've been up to. Importantly, virtual, just as we're doing a virtual session today, virtual clinics. We've moved most of our outpatient activity, out 80% of it or more, virtually, which is great for the environment as well, reducing our carbon footprint, all that car travel, just one example. So what's my conclusion? Well, the top bullet there is not my line. Lord Andrew Crisp used to be the chief executive of the NHS, has written a book called Hospitals Are for Repairs, Health is Made at Home. And I absolutely believe that, and never more so. My hospital is a high viral environment. You don't want to be there unless you absolutely have to be there. And so I think we've got to increasingly do this kind of stuff where we move our outpatients into more local facilities, do it in partnership with a local business, a cafe, a gym, whatever, and create a different kind of climate for patients to access their care. NHS hospitals like mine can and should leverage our financial, intellectual, creative and innovative capacity and capability in partnership with both public and private sector and the third sector to improve the health and well-being of local communities and the teams, importantly, that are serving them. And this will, I am certain of it from what I've seen over the last 12 months, continue to improve resilience and sustainability. And I think Ben already said this, the economy and health are allies, not opposing forces. And I think sometimes through the last 12 months, it's felt a little bit like we have to choose between being well or having a sustainable economy. And my proposition and experience would be that we absolutely don't have to choose. We have to choose to work together. And I hope I've given you some examples of that today. Thank you, Alistair.
Suzanne, thank you so much for joining us today. And a big thank you, of course, to all your teams for the wonderful work that they're doing at the moment. We're going to return to air travel now. Becky Coffin is the Director of Communities and Sustainability at Heathrow Airport. Becky leads a team to deliver ambitious commitments to the local community and the environment. She works closely with community, business and government stakeholders, and over the last year has been responsible for overseeing Heathrow's support to communities throughout the pandemic. Today's topic will look at the opportunity provided by the life science and pharma sector to the recovery of air travel, as well as looking at local supply chain developments. Becky, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Alistair. And I must start by paying tribute to Suzanne and her team in the NHS for the simple dedication and care that they've given to our community. It really is inspiring to hear of not only the healthcare, but everything else that you've been doing to support the communities. And I'm sure everyone on the call, like me, has seen how that's made a difference to not only colleagues, but family and friends too. And at Heathrow, we continue to work closely with the NHS through our vaccination centre that will be opening shortly, and also the mass testing centre that we already have had in place for many months. But I'm delighted to be here talking on behalf of Heathrow, and it's great to see so many attendees on the call. And I fully agree with Suzanne's point about collaboration being really key here. For us to recover and build future prosperity in this county and the region, we need to collaborate. And it stands out from the couple of polls that Alistair's run this afternoon, and also from a number of the speakers and questions, that international connectivity is a really critical local asset. And Stuart's already explained some of that context. As well as the team that I lead that Alistair mentioned there, I'm also a Surrey resident. And it's been really clear to me over the last 11 months how closely entwined the fortunes of aviation and the local economy are. And I'll talk a little bit in this short slot about some of the things we've been doing to help support that recovery. So we've heard from Stuart about the devastating impact of COVID on the aviation sector and how it's responding. So I won't repeat that, but I'll give you a flavour of where Heathrow is at today. I'll also talk about cargo and in particular the links with pharmaceuticals and healthcare industry. And I'll also talk about our work on local recovery and how we want to maximise the opportunities for the for supply chains as well. So let's just go to the first slide. So you may know this already, but Heathrow is the largest single site employer in the UK. So many people and businesses rely on us to be successful, employing over 75,000 colleagues at the end of 2019. The last year has been incredibly challenging for aviation. So we saw similar numbers to those Stuart described. By the end of 2020, passenger numbers for the whole year were down by 73%. In the period April to June, passenger numbers down over 96%. And of course, we had to take similar swift and decisive action to mitigate the impacts. Today, we published our traffic figures for January, and passenger numbers are once again down by 89%, and cargo was down by 21%, and I'll explain a bit more about that in a moment. But we know that because of the numbers that I mentioned earlier, Heathrow is a really important local employer and has a big impact on a number of boroughs, Surrey County included. So it's more important than ever, I think, that we work closely with partners such as the council to tackle these challenges. And of course, we support absolutely the government's measures to protect public health. But I think we have to recognise that what we face at the moment is essentially a border closure. And Stuart outlined what support is needed. And there's two key things I think that I would draw out. So the first is a flight plan that will reopen Britain's borders safely. And we'd like to see that as part of the PM's roadmap to recovery on the 22nd of February, and also targeted support to ensure that this sector, which is critical for local business, can survive. And that means full business rates relief and the extension of furlough. But despite these challenges, we've of course prioritised health and safety and implemented many of the measures that Stuart has talked about, such as additional cleaning and new technologies. And we've also been working with NHS Test and Trace on a government-led rapid testing pilot. So around 2,000 Heathrow Airport colleagues are now regularly taking part in rapid lateral flow tests, which is helping to identify anyone who may be carrying the virus but not knowing it. And these sorts of steps are really important in the fight against this virus. What many people don't know is that Heathrow is also the UK's biggest port by value. So we specialise in high value, time sensitive goods, and that of course includes pharmaceutical equipment and medicine. So that meant it was really key that we played our part in helping to equip frontline workers and hospitals back in the spring last year as the pandemic took hold. So I think the pandemic has highlighted all sorts of things, but one thing we've seen is how important this relationship between Heathrow and the pharmaceutical and life sciences sectors is. So in 2019, so before the pandemic, 40% of all the UK's exports by value travelled via Heathrow. So that's around £140 billion worth of trade, which is more than the ports of Felixstowe and Southampton combined. And within that, pharmaceutical products were one of Heathrow's top 5 exports by value in that year. So that's over £6 billion. So through the pandemic, like Gatwick, we remained open to support both the local and national businesses to respond and ensure that PPE, medical equipment, etc., could get to where it needed. And between January to March last year, we welcomed 58% of the UK's pharmaceutical imports by value, which meant those vital supply chain lines for healthcare were kept open. That was everything from sterilisation and disinfecting products to medical oxygen, swabs and test kits. And not only from dedicated cargo carriers like DHL Express, but also repurposed passenger aircraft. Looking at cargo a bit more broadly, and you'll see there's a map here on the screen. In 2019, Heathrow connected cargo with more than 590 airports in 83 different countries around the world. And during the peak, so between March and June last year, during the peak of the COVID-19 crisis, cargo movements at Heathrow saw a 941% increase compared to the previous year. So you can see what a huge focus it was for us to keep that moving. What this map shows with the light purple is destinations, and dark purple, the origins of pharmaceutical cargo that was flying in and out of Heathrow in 2020 by the closest city. And what that shows is that in the UK, we're mainly an importer of pharmaceutical products from the US and India. The global picture also highlights how diverse the sector is and how it relies on our broad network at Heathrow. So we export from the UK products out to South America, Africa, the Middle East and Southeast Asia. But inevitably in 2020, cargo volumes fell by just over 28% because of the impact of travel restrictions on international trade. Prior to the pandemic, most cargo was travelling in the belly hold of passenger planes, so around 94%. So even with changing some of those to freight only, that means we've been impacted by the travel restrictions. I guess what this highlights is that Heathrow is most definitely more than just an airport. It's we like to think of it as the country's biggest front door, not only for people, but also for time critical sensitive cargo for this industry in particular. And it's really important that we can keep supporting that industry over the coming months because there's clearly unprecedented demand, which is continuing in areas like medical supplies. And we've heard a lot about that from Pfizer today. It's also important to Heathrow because with hotel quarantine, lockdowns and other things, we know passenger numbers will continue to be low for a while. So keeping our cargo in operation will enable us to continue to support UK economic recovery in some way. So finally, I just want to share a little bit about our work on local recovery. So in November last year, we released our Heathrow Local Recovery Plan. So we worked collaboratively with key stakeholders, including Surrey, to create this plan. It's got a series of 18 recommendations in it for how the sector can recover, supporting local communities that have been impacted. It sets out what we want to do to help the local airport economy, both in the short but also the longer term. And it came on the back of some research by Oxford Economics that estimated that there would be at least 16,000 fewer jobs in the key boroughs around the airport by the end of this year. And to be honest, I suspect that number will probably have increased by now, given the second and third waves we've seen. Two key asks in the plan of government to support that. One is to temporarily introduce flexibility in how the apprenticeship levy can be used, and secondly, to provide support through reskilling and retraining opportunities to help those who are impacted to either stay in or perhaps find new employment. So we're now working on delivering that plan. We have a recovery forum, Heathrow-led, which is chaired for us by Lord David Blunkett. And it's focusing on 4 key areas: skills, employment and education, green recovery, surface access, and supply chain. And so to finish up, I'll just touch briefly on how we're looking to maximise supply chain opportunities. And I noticed a couple of questions in the chat that suggest that this is of interest for local business. Whilst times are challenging now, we know that we have, as we move through recovery, a really fundamental role in ensuring that we support economic benefit locally and also nationally. So it's really important that businesses of all sizes and locations are aware of the opportunities available and get the information about how to do business easily with Heathrow. And we know that's been a challenge in the past. So our aim is to continue removing barriers, proactively engage with local business, including SMEs and those from local disadvantaged and underrepresented communities, to ensure that economic benefits are generated locally and in all parts of the community. So we're working with our forum to develop websites and supplier guides, testing those to ensure that they meet the needs of SMEs and breaking down barriers to join our supply chain. We know that Heathrow is a key economic driver in the areas around the airport, and that the downturn caused by COVID-19 has eclipsed anything that the Heathrow supply chain will have seen before. So this is how we want to play our part in helping recovery. So that brings me to the end of what I wanted to share today. I guess the final point is just to acknowledge, how critical we see Surrey. It's a major international gateway for people and for businesses in the area around the airport. And it's been highlighted today, some of the unique attributes, including the important professional business networks that help to create contacts, business opportunities and share knowledge. And as Heathrow, we're really proud to be playing our part in those and look forward to working in partnership with Surrey to continue that. Thank you.
Becky Coffin, thank you so much for contributing there. Now, if you have a question for Becky or any of our other speakers, please do put those into the Q&A section, and we'll get through as many of those questions during our panel discussion a little bit later. But first, Spotlight on Surrey is going to focus on how the University of Surrey is contributing during the pandemic, how research and innovation is helping the county's economic recovery. Greg Melly is the Special Advisor to the Vice-Chancellor at the University of Surrey, a role that builds on the university's engagement with civil and civic society, as well as growth and impact locally and nationally. Greg, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Alistair, and good afternoon, everyone. My objective is to share what's been going on at the university in response to the dramatic events of last year, and to offer some views of how we together, through science and technology and through people, can make Surrey a more vibrant and prosperous place in the future. And I would also hold that that same ethos will enable us to embrace ecological imperatives such as climate change and so on. So for those who don't know us, here's a snapshot of the University of Surrey today. Together with our Surrey Research Park and its tenant companies, we support nearly 20,000 jobs across the UK and deliver almost £2 billion in economic benefit in GBA terms. We are what is known as a research intensive university, and we recognise ourselves as an anchor institution operating for public benefit. At the heart of our purpose and values is a call to improve humanity through the development of and cultivation of social, economic and personal well-being. For us, that really means working closely with the communities and the organisations around us. In the UK, we're very fortunate to have an agile and accomplished science research base. It's very well coordinated and aligned through the research agencies, through the local enterprise partnerships, and through the government's own innovation strategy. This system brings solutions that are key to recovery and progress. So when the pandemic hit, our scientists were already very well placed to quickly refocus their research interests on COVID. Pre-COVID, Guildford and the university had for many years been at the epicenter of an ecosystem that's really inspired and delivered innovations much too numerous for me to mention here. The clusters of activity in Surrey are dominated by digital and clean technologies that are capable of super growth. These clusters are already shaping our lives and our opportunities for the future. Digital health, AI, telecommunications, satellite engineering, gaming, and animal health all feature very strongly here at Surrey. Our award-winning Surrey Research Park features over 170 companies and 4,500 employees, contributing about £500 million per annum to the national economy. The park is home to the university's Surrey 100 Angel Investor Club and its Set Squared Tech Incubator, and forms an important centre of innovation and entrepreneurial activity here in Surrey. It also strengthens that great ecosystem for the high-tech and the innovation-driven economy in the region. The Set Squared network, for those that don't know it, is a collaboration between 5 universities working together to support startup and step-up businesses, mainly in the Southeast. It's been consistently rated as the world's #1 business university incubator, and here at Surrey, we are one of the most active members of that network. The Surrey Research Park and the enterprise system around it are intended to be a cradle of Surrey's economic recovery and the future prosperity. Infrastructural constraints, particularly road capacity, electrical power, and housing shortages, are the main obstacles to this recovery in Surrey, and these really must be tackled. The university's planned development on Blackwell Park, seen in this image as the ploughed field in the top right, is intended to help address these issues in the Guildford area. Blackwell Park will expand the research park by nearly 50% over time, and its development is intended to be a landowner legacy style exemplar project in line with the Building Better, Building Beautiful Commission's recommendations, and will include about 1,800 houses and a very important new relief road to the west. So when COVID hit, the need was to swiftly pivot and step up to new challenges locally and nationally. Within a couple of months of the onset of COVID-19 in the UK, more than 100 related research projects have been kicked off here at Surrey, and numerous other initiatives to help support the NHS. As always, many of these projects were collaborative and collegiate in their nature and included research areas like behaviour, business and policy, environment, healthcare, technology, and much more. One positive from this crisis is the innovation that's come as a result of it. Another is the level of collaboration that we've all used to tackle it. Now, this slide gives a tiny insight into some of the work that's been going on in Surrey's research. Examples include providing COVID-19 analysis and modelling to understand and reduce the uncertainties of forecast models, Another group of researchers has been developing models that determine the risk of COVID-19 infection within enclosed spaces, such as offices and public transport. Our Professor of Nutritional Medicine, Margaret Raymond, led an international team of researchers in identifying a link between COVID-19 cure rates and selenium. Other researchers have been working on links with vitamin D deficiency. Our efforts have been well supported and recognised by the funding bodies and government, who've recently awarded us £10.5 million in grant funding for COVID-related research. We're very, very grateful for that. We'll continue to work with the UK funding bodies and the government to ensure that our research and innovation community receives as much investment as possible. It's very much needed and much deserved at the moment. Now, one of the discoveries that's resulted from the research at Surrey, in collaboration with Brunel and Lancaster, and you'll see Roberto Larragioni a bit later, and he's very involved in this, is a new highly accurate COVID-19 test. This delivers results in under 20 minutes. It's unique in its accuracy, the ease of use, the speed, the safety, the cost, and is clearly differentiated from the current LAMP and PCR tests. In simple terms, up to 6 oral samples can be taken and tested per machine at any one time. AI is then used to assess the results, and integrated 5G technologies are used to report the test in about 20 minutes. The lab and the hospital-based trials have been very encouraging, and the public trials are now underway here at the university, and we expect full release to the market quite soon. Now, I commend to you the Charting Surrey's Post-COVID Rescue, Recovery and Growth Report, authored by Professor Amelia Hadfield and her team in the Centre for Britain and Europe. This report provides a thorough review of the impact of COVID-19 on Surrey's businesses, healthcare, aviation and knowledge sectors, and offers a host of strategic recommendations to local and national governments. The report was commissioned by the Future Economy Surrey Commission, chaired by Lord Philip Hammond, and both the complete report and the executive summary are publicly available online. Now, one of the most interesting findings of the report is that the business, healthcare, aviation, and knowledge economy sectors each demonstrate areas of genuine comparative advantage for Surrey nationally and competitive advantage globally. The report also finds, however, that complacency had already taken hold pre-COVID-19, and this reduces the potential for cross-sector recovery and growth. So there's great more to be done. Professor Hadfield's team were delighted recently to win further funding from Research England to allow further intense collaboration with Surrey County Council on a further report due at the end of April entitled Place-Based Growth in Surrey, Local Responses and County Drivers. And that's looking specifically at drivers for sustainable growth and employment. Now, and this is what I want to pick up in the last couple of moments of my talk. We have great assets here in Surrey. We've got superb technology clusters. We have skills and capabilities in abundance. We also have a terrific locational advantage between Heathrow, Gatwick, and London. Surrey has historically enjoyed a privileged position, but we can't depend on it for the future. We need ambition rather than complacency. Two of the most fundamental enablers for economic growth are infrastructure and civic cohesion. Our stressed Southeast infrastructure isn't going to be saved by silver bullets from central government, from complaints and or campaigns. It's instead going to be eased by us really working the problem together. We're also, of course, also challenged not only by the impact of COVID-19 and international events, but a need to find a new role for ourselves in the Southeast, given the national strategy to rebalance the regions by diverting resources and strategies up north. So this endeavour must be characterised by an attitude of self-help. We can start by building a better narrative for the Southeast, by selling our story better and by working together. We can also proactively do more to understand the role of new technologies and what strategies and tactics we require to deliver them. We need more homes, stronger communities, and a planning system that delivers beautiful places for everyone. At the end of the day, we really want more people working here, living here, and loving it. At the University of Surrey, we look forward to continuing to work with you in supporting the county and the community's prosperity and well-being both during stability and upheaval. So we'll stay agile and engaged and contribute our talent, our research and solutions to meet whatever the future brings. And we want to do it together. Thank you.
Greg Melly, thank you very much. Greg there from the University of Surrey. Our final presentation today will look at the role of the Department for International Trade to support exporters, looking at how Surrey businesses can access those key overseas markets. Now, Stephen Jones is International Trade Advisor for DIT, a position he's held since 2015. He's had a 30-year career in pharmaceuticals, consumer healthcare and medical devices with companies including GlaxoSmithKline and Johnson & Johnson. Stephen.
Thank you, Alistair, and good afternoon, everybody. Export activity underpins the prosperity of Surrey and the rest of the UK. And I'm sure a lot of the attendees this afternoon are in export and know about DIT, but there's probably a sizable number who don't. So I'm going to give you a quick run through of Department for International Trade, how we're structured, how we're financed, what we do, and how to get in touch with us. Next slide, please. So we've been around in various forms since the Board of Trade was set up about 50 years ago. And our role is very simple. It's to help British companies, mainly small and medium enterprises, to sell across the world. And there's nothing more important than developing business overseas, because one of the main benefits, apart from to the UK economy, is that it can de-risk your business, because if you're only operating in the United Kingdom and there's a downturn here, then your business is more vulnerable than if you were selling to several countries or 50 countries overseas. So I would encourage companies to export. My working life has been entirely in export, so that's why I'm an advocate of doing that. So we're funded by the Treasury, and we have a wide range of practical services that do work. And I'll preface what I'm going to say next by giving one example of export success. When I joined DIT 5 years ago, I had one client, a healthcare client, who was exporting £400,000 worth a year. And I engaged with them, and I met with the board, and they were reactive. They had a team of 2 office staff dealing with inquiries that came in. And I said to the chief executive, what you should do, first of all, is to hire an export manager and become proactive, because you'll be able to grow your business. Basic common sense, I think. He said, you're quite right. And they did that. They've now got a team of 9 people, 3 or 4 of whom go overseas and meet distributors, and their export turnover has risen from £400,000 to 3 million at the end of December last year. And in July 19, they got the Queen's Award for International Trade. So that's an example that our services do work. Next slide, please. So we have an international footprint. We are in our embassies and high commissions. We've got DIT staff across the world, a total of 1,300 in over 100 countries. And you have access to those staff via your international trade advisor, and they can help you in those countries to develop your business in a solid and sound way for the future. And in the UK, we have 200 international trade advisors. And the trade advisors are not civil servants. They are all from industry, from the private sector. And one of the criterion for becoming a trade advisor is to have a record of achievement in selling overseas. And that makes us knowledgeable about the kind of work that is involved in developing a strong export business. Next slide, please. So the trade advisors we have in the London and South East area, we've got 65. And we work already with a lot of companies in Surrey, and I've got about a dozen clients in the Surrey area. And how do we work with them? Well, we give them close attention and help them understand those that are starting their export journey, those that have already got an export business and growing it. We can help them in several ways. If you're just starting your export business, we can help you develop your export plan, help you prioritize the countries to sell to. If your business model is through distributors, we can help you find distributors and help you appoint them. We can set up meetings for you through the embassy or high commission so that you've got a full diary, and when you land overseas in the country, you've got a diary full of meetings to go to already. Basically, we help you make your business happen. Next slide, please. Now, to bring some focus to our work, we are divided into sectors, and there are 7 sectors in the London and South East area, listed on the left of that slide. And by having that focus, we're able to give precise advice to your company. It's bespoke advice, and it helps generate greater business through that tuned advice to your business interests. For example, I focus mainly on medical devices and pharmaceutical and consumer healthcare companies. And because I've worked in those businesses, I know a bit about them, and therefore I can give advice that's generally pretty relevant to them. And I would say that if I haven't got an answer to a question, and I don't know all the answers by any means, I can network across the 65 trade advisors, and I send an email to the lot. And within probably 2 hours, I'll have 3 or 4 answers, and I can feed them into my clients. So we are a great resource with many, probably a few hundred years of business experience, actually, that you can tap into, mainly free of charge. Next slide, please. Now, our range of services is very broad, and as I said at the outset, it's very, very practical. And we focus on the nuts and bolts of getting business running overseas for you. It's an advisory service. You implement what we suggest. We collaborate with you. We can act as a sounding board, and we can generally fine-tune what you're doing. And then in addition to that, we have some limited money from the Treasury to finance some of your activities. So first of all, our offering includes, it says expert trade advisors. I don't like the word expert, but there we are. It's advice from trade advisors on topics that you raise with us, and we find out the answers, and we can give advice from our detailed experience about what to do next, and so on. And then we have, in terms of the sort of finance available for you, if you wanted to participate in a trade show overseas, we have the Trade Show Access Program. We support about 350 trade shows a year, and we have money available up to about £2,500 to help you attend that trade show when they're allowed, but obviously it's all virtual at the moment. We have money for overseas travel to Europe and beyond, a small amount of money aimed at small companies, basically. And we're careful how we allocate that, but if provided you qualify, you can get a little bit of money to help you on your business trip. More importantly than that, actually, we have access through our various services to export opportunities overseas. And those opportunities are in countries that you've chosen to focus upon. And another piece of money that we have is for the market selection service, which prioritizes the countries that you might wish to develop in. I had one company about 4 years ago wanting to launch a product. It was a halal vitamin into 15 countries simultaneously. And I said, how are you going to do that? How many people in your company? And he said, well, there's just me, and then I outsource the manufacturing. And I said, well, how are you going to launch in 15 countries with one person simultaneously? And he went away and thought about it and came back and said, you're quite right, I can't do that. So we had to prioritize the countries that he would launch in, and he launched in 2 to start with. So the market selection service, we've got some money to pay for that. And the other area we have a bit of money for is to improve your websites. A lot of websites are very good. A lot of them are old. Most of the ones I see actually are not particularly international oriented. And there are some tricks you can use to make overseas customers really stick with the website and follow it through, not just click in, spend 20 seconds and click off. So that is, again, a partially funded service to improve your website. And then we have market research opportunities. We do that. It's not primary research, but we do it from access to databases and so on to give you a full feel of the overseas market you want to get into. And we also have cultural trading on operating across cultures and time zones, and a whole host of other training. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And as I say, the events for the last year have been all virtual. And I have to say, by the way, over the last year, and this is a full credit to the Surrey companies and others outside Surrey who've kept going exporting. And despite the difficulties of the COVID virus situation, exports have held up remarkably well, despite having to cope with that and also leaving the European Union. Next slide, please. So there are a lot of useful sources of information within the Department for International Trade, and these are some of the links to them. You can look up your commodity code, and once you know that, you can work out the tariff for that particular good or service. And this is a vital source of information for all exporters. So that is something that you should make full use of. Next slide, please. Now, the digital area, selling online, is a growing part of international trade. There's a huge amount of business done internationally, particularly with services via the internet. And we have strength in depth in that technology and how to make the most of that. And the link at the bottom of that page can access the resource that we have for that. And we've got trade advisors too who know about online selling and can give you advice. So I would suggest you click on that link if you want to sell overseas via the internet, because they will provide support to get to know how to do it or to increase your business if you're already doing it. Next slide, please. Now, I think this source of information is probably the key source of information for companies that wish to export, great.gov.uk. It is an absolute mine of information giving advice on how to export. There's a lot of training work, services there you can access free of charge. There's information about overseas countries, economic data, how to do business in those countries, cultural difficulties, political difficulties, etc. And the third topic on the menu on the top bar there is about the services that GREAT offers. And there's one particular service I think you should take note of because it's very useful. This website gets huge numbers of visitors internationally. And there is an opportunity in the website to put up your company profile. Just a brief, punchy guide to what you do, what you sell, how they would benefit from your product or service. And if you're looking for a distributor, you can put that in there as well. And if you just type into the search bar company profile, you can register for nothing. And most times you get good responses. So I would encourage you to look at that website for that reason alone. A very good source of information. Next slide, please.
Stephen Jones, we're running a little bit short of time, so if we can begin to wrap things up.
Yes, I will. UK export finance, if you've got finance concerns, go to that link at the bottom. It's part of DIT. They never let an export opportunity pass without the provision of good finance. Next slide. And if you've got any patent or copyright or trademark protection needs, go to the Intellectual Property Office. That is also available to you. And a lot of that advice is free of charge. Next slide. And then, particularly importantly, these links are all about transition queries Most of those are answered via those links or your international trade advisor. And I think the final slide. Oh no, there's another source of information, so I'd encourage you to have a look at that as well. And I think now the final slide, that's the Southeast International Team phone and email address. So do get in touch if you're not an exporter or want to grow your business and don't have a trade advisor. We can help you. We're here to help. Thank you.
Stephen, thank you very much for your time today, all extremely informative. That brings to an end all of our speakers today here at Spotlight on Surrey. Before we go to our panel, we're going to return to the poll that we've been conducting today. The final question I'd like you to consider is coming up on your screen now. And again, you'll see there'll be a number of answers you can select. That question: what is needed to stimulate more innovation projects and trials in Surrey? So access to live test environments, facilitated introductions to potential cohorts, post-trial routes to market, cost versus benefit, and awareness of funding calls. So what is needed to stimulate more innovation projects and trials in Surrey? And our results will come up any moment now. And there we have it. Awareness of funding calls in at 47%, followed by facilitated introductions to potential cohorts, access to live test environments at 21%, also post-trial routes to market 2, followed by cost versus benefits. So thanks to all of our speakers, it's now an opportunity to put some of the questions that you've been submitting to our panel. The speakers joining us for this are Tim Oliver, Ben Osborne, Stuart Wingate, Suzanne Rankin, Becky Coffin, Greg Melly and Stephen Jones. But we're also joined during this section by Mark Pearson from Royal Holloway University, where Mark is Head of Knowledge Exchange and Enterprise, and also Professor Roberto Laragioni from the University of Surrey, and also from the University of Surrey, we've got Jenny Ritchie, who's the Senior Business Manager at Enterprise Programs at the university. So I think our first question to Tim. One delegate has said, great work, Tim, going on in Surrey, but why don't we shout more about it?
Well, I think that's exactly what this sort of event is about. Yeah, I completely recognise that probably Surrey, hasn't shouted enough about many things that go on in this county, whether it's the beautiful countryside, the most wooded county in the country, and the over 300 business headquarters for international businesses. So I mean, we do need to get that message out there. We do need to connect people. I think these sorts of events and the different the Surrey Business Leadership Forum and the Chambers of Commerce and so on, those are all really important parts in spreading that word and encouraging people to come and live and work here. I think we do have the challenge of the high cost of living in Surrey. That's something that we have to address. But beyond that, it's a fantastic location, great communications, and we as a county council, together with all of our partners, will do all that we can to shout that story and and to support, and where we can with public funds, invest in whether it's infrastructure or other things that will make a difference to those businesses.
Tim, thank you very much. A topical question now for Ben Oliver, one I would expect that you would anticipate, Ben, given the current climate. A question asking how much of a focus currently your work is upon the variants of the virus, particularly the South African variant. What more can you tell us about that? Obviously, that's been in the news an awful lot recently.
Yeah, sure. No, thanks, Alistair. Great question. So right now, there is, as you've seen, unfortunately, a number of new strains and mutations of the COVID-19 virus here in the UK and globally. I think the first thing to say is that is not unexpected. This is what viruses do, so it is not a surprise to us or to our scientists, to government or the NHS, and it's something that we'd already actually started to prepare for many months back in terms of potential mutations. So I think that's the first thing. We shouldn't be concerned from that regard. Right now, there is lots of work taking place both across Pfizer and indeed with government, and I think we should be all aware that the UK has actually the leading, and I mean genuinely the world leading genomic network and coordination of academic and industry groups around this type of work. It's why actually so many of the variants, and we've got so many cases identified in the UK because of that. And so right now, there's a huge amount going on behind the scenes, but across all of the different vaccines that are in research or have been licensed to date, there is no indication that we actually need to have what we call a strain change at this point in time. So I think the reassurance is there's work taking place, but we should all be confident in the vaccines that are being used in the NHS right now.
Ben, thank you very much. Let me turn now to Mark Pearson from Royal Holloway University. Mark, we've been asked today how local businesses can best present themselves to multinationals to support the local economy. What would be your perspective? What would be your take on that?
Thanks very much, Alistair. I'm fairly unique in many respects, having worked both in the economic development profession and now the last couple of years or so within the higher education. And it's amazing how actually COVID scenario or the COVID situation has actually enabled us to open up our own communications with both corporates, but also with SMEs and small businesses. Actually, instead of it taking many months for perhaps people to be accessed, the whole process is speeded up because we will become very familiar with this technology. Who would have thought 18 months ago we'd have a challenging subject matter such as this and be able to discuss it with 150 people using this technology. But in terms of opening doors, for me it's about being very clear about what the ask is. We're approached on a very regular basis by companies who want to use our facilities. We've got some world-class facilities, as have the University of Surrey. And actually, it's been particularly frustrating over the summer of last year when we physically could not open those facilities for companies to come in and use them, whether directly themselves or using our technicians. We've been very clear on that and understanding what we need to do has enabled us, that to happen. I also think, and I think it was Stephen who said, the story about somebody wanting to do 15 things and ended up doing 2 things. I've always been a great advocate. If you can achieve one thing and then move to the next thing, you are making progress rather than biting off too much.
Mark, thank you very much for that. Suzanne Rankin, a question that's come in for you about integrated care partnerships. Interested to hear how you feel they will play a role in the years to come and how they will help change the delivery of local care. Suzanne, your mic is off.
A very timely question, Alistair, with the launching of the white paper today by the Secretary of State. Integrated care partnerships working within the integrated care system that Tim is the chairman of the board for are absolutely alive and well and already fully active in Surrey. So we sit within the Northwest Surrey Integrated Care Partnership, and that is a partnership of all of the providers of healthcare, mental health, primary care, physical health, obviously hospitals, social care, really importantly, our local hospices are a part of that partnership, and in some cases, third sector providers. So what it's giving us the opportunity to do is to consider together the health outcome challenges for our local population, and then plan together, and in some circumstances think about different forms of investment and channeling investment where it's most needed. Historically, hospitals have consumed an enormous proportion of the overall health budget, as I shared in my slides, and this is an opportunity to think differently, focus, as I said, on health and well-being in communities rather than fixing problems once they arrive in my hospitals, for example, and ensuring that we work collaboratively to build a resilient community. And I think finally, the last thing I'd say about it is an opportunity to really involve the community, have a proper, real partnership with our community and our patients and citizens, and give them much more control over what happens to them in regard to their health and well-being, and how, if they do require treatment, they access it. And this will largely be enabled through digital technology, which we are deploying as we speak across Surrey. So I think it's a great step forward. I don't think the announcement today is anything new. I think we have all been working very closely on the sort of arrangements behind the scenes, and hopefully for patients, what they will experience is more control, more seamless, joined up pathways of care across all of the different providers that they might have to interact with.
Suzanne, thank you very much. We're going to run over a little bit just so that we can fit in a few more questions. Let's turn now to Heathrow and Becky Coffin. Becky, if you don't mind, could we put a point to you about importing from countries like India and the US? Do you see this continuing, and in what way can we build on more of that type of business?
Thank you, Alistair. And I think the question came from Kathy in the chat, so thank you for that. I mean, I think absolutely we see that those links continuing. Clearly, there will be challenges over the next few months, but as we recover out of this, those trade links are going to be absolutely critical. So we see those continuing. And of course, even despite the pandemic, there's a lot of work that continues to establish trade links with new destinations around the world, particularly in the Far East. And no doubt those will be prospering shortly too. I think it's probably a question perhaps for the pharmaceutical businesses on the call as to how that might be expanded in the future. But certainly we will be continuing to grow the number of destinations and the links that we have around the world to support the international trade for businesses in Surrey.
Thank you, Becky. Let's return now to universities. And Jenny Ritchie, we've not spoken to you yet, so perhaps this is one for you. Interesting point about how universities are able to help businesses link up with each other and the role that they can play in that. What would be your thoughts?
Hi, yeah, absolutely. So the university, as Greg mentioned, we have Set Squared Surrey, which helps incubate businesses. So we've got a lot of SMEs, a lot of really innovative entrepreneurial businesses there. We've got the Research Park with 174 companies, and obviously we work more widely abroad afield as well. So yeah, our researchers, our academics are very keen. It's really important to make the research relevant to the real world. There's lots of different ways which we can engage with businesses and collaborate from, as Greg mentioned on the side, over 2,000 placement students, a place with industry, consultancy, collaborative research, so the Innovate funding. There's all sorts of ways, and we're really keen to have conversations, so we can be contacted at collaborate@surrey.ac.uk. And yeah, Royal Holloway will be the same. There's lots of different ways in which we can engage with businesses, and our doors are very open to have those conversations about how we can help businesses innovate and grow, and how we can help our researchers develop their research as well.
Jenny, thank you. Let's return to Tim Oliver. Tim, one of the first questions that came in today was asking how Surrey can build a symbiotic relationship with larger employers to achieve net zero. How would you frame that?
Yeah, well, I think that again, I mean, I think we've talked a lot, quite rightly so, about partnership working. I mean, we all need to work together to achieve these aims. I think, in terms of net zero, carbon net zero, we know that in Surrey, 47% of carbon is produced from transport. So that's a big area of focus for us. As a county council, we're investing 48 million into low emission vehicles. We have a plan to roll out electric buses and minibuses around the county and so on. But we also need to look at the whole infrastructure and ways in which we can get people to employment hubs, by public transport and so on. We need to work through the various business forums, helping them, businesses access the various grants that are available and so on. So there's lots to do. I mean, this is about making sure that people understand, educating businesses as to what's available and what can be done. And really, we have a piece of work here which sort of sets out that roadmap to 2050 in terms of what we need to achieve to get to carbon neutral. And we're happy to share that with businesses and say, give whatever support we can, financial or otherwise.
Tim, thank you. Let's just turn to Stuart Wingate. Stuart, you were very honest earlier about the challenges of the past year, in particular issues around your staff. Be keen to hear a perspective on how you're helping people with retraining.
Yeah, so obviously we've had very big impacts staff-wise at the airport, as I mentioned. Of the original workforce of about 25,000, we think about 10 to 15,000 remain within the aviation sector, albeit many people on furlough. And certainly what we have been doing is to work with Tim and Surrey County Council, as well as the West Sussex County Council, looking at various different recovery options so that we can start to get people back to work either in the airport and the aviation sector, or looking at ways in which people can be retrained and reskilled and deployed into the broader economy.
Thank you, Stuart. Ben, let's just return to you briefly. I know we're beginning to run out of time, but interested to get a sense on how local businesses can best present themselves to multinationals to support the local economy.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've looked at a variety of different ways. I mean, we've primarily been working on our schools partnership. I mean, we're very fortunate that in terms of the work that we do, it has huge relevance to the local community, both in terms of the health and well-being, but then also from an education point of view. So, we started off actually with a relatively simple, straightforward, low-cost approach with a small number of colleagues, with some basic materials and building up that engagement. And as we learned and we took the feedback, we scaled up. And we're now at a point where we're reaching widely, across Surrey, as you heard earlier, with a range of digital materials. We've got huge engagement across our organisation. And I think for us, it was a recognition from colleagues and their feedback directly that actually they got so much out of it. They got so much positivity from actually helping in their local communities, in their local schools, and with their volunteering work as well. So I think my advice would be, work out, where you can provide that expertise, start small and in a focused way, and then build up and learn. And, after a relatively few number of years, we've got a pretty significant outreach now.
Let's put a question, thank you, Ben. Let's put a question now to Professor Roberto Laragione about resource and learnings and how we can share to help combat those global issues like the pandemic. After all, this is all about recovering from the impact of COVID.
Absolutely, thanks, Alistair. And I think from the university's perspective, we've worked very closely with hospitals in providing both equipment and advice, but also thinking about resources when we're developing diagnostics, for instance, and even reagents for those development of diagnostics. So there's a huge opportunity to work with our collaborators, but also to work with local government. And in part of our development of diagnostic tests, we work very closely with the Pirbright Institute and the Animal and Plant Health Agency, both working as part of the government to actually increase resource, think about staffing that we can share, training that we can share, and also equipment which we can loan between our individual organisations.
Roberto, thank you. Let's just return finally to Suzanne. This might be our last question today. Opportunities for the health sector, Suzanne Rankin, to play a role in revitalising our high streets. Obviously, they've been suffering more than ever. How can we use those empty shops to provide sort of more local services for residents? It feels like there's a huge opportunity there.
Yeah, no, I'd agree, Alistair. You know, if you think about the traditional model, patients come to the hospital, and I think, you know, a number of panelists and questions have pointed to the problem with the traffic, the air quality. I mean, one of our concerns is that the air quality is actually driving ill health in our local population. We see that in the hospital with the respiratory burden. So, you know, we've been thinking about why do people need to come to the hospital? What's constraining us? And I think we were often organising services to kind of meet our own purpose. You know, from my point of view, having all the clinicians in one place and I can deploy them from, you know, one place to another, from one clinic. Well, that isn't the purpose of my organisation. My purpose is to meet the needs of the local population. And so at the same time, if the added value can be that we can rejuvenate Woking High Street, I'm saying that Woking needs particular rejuvenation, but you know, there are opportunities there, and we are working through the Integrated Care Partnership with the district and boroughs to identify what we're calling place making opportunities so that we can build healthy communities. So there's lots of examples, dermatology services, ophthalmology services, audiology services. We've already given the example of the physiotherapy services. And often this will be an opportunity to bring a kind of a health cluster together that might bring together healthcare professionals from secondary and primary care, maybe the right kinds of voluntary and supportive sectors. So you can imagine citizens' advice, these sorts of other really great providers of advice and support to the local community, as well as you know, yoga suites, fitness. Nutrition is a big problem, making sure that, you know, parents are supported in developing healthy lifestyles with children. So, you know, there's a great set of opportunities there. And I think what's great to see is that our local district and boroughs are really up for that. Tim's very supportive from Surrey County Council in identifying opportunities to do that. So we're working on opportunities along those lines in Addleston, Staines, Woking, and other locations in the patch. So you'll see more of the NHS, I think, working in partnership on the high street to come, definitely.
Good. Well, I think we'll all welcome that. And Suzanne, thank you so much for wrapping up our Q&A. Now, if you have asked a question and it wasn't picked up today, fear not, someone at Surrey County Council will respond over the next few hours. Now, we've had more than 150 people take part in today's event. It's been a collaboration between Business South, Surrey County Council, and the Department for International Trade. Now, all delegates will receive a post-event email. Please could you click on the link and complete the short survey. We'd like to know what future topics you'd like to see on Spotlight on Surrey over the months ahead. Now, finally, as we move to our breakout sessions, I'd like to thank all of our speakers, of course, for today's event. The breakout sessions will be an opportunity for more practical discussion, so please do join us for those. There's a short window now for a comfort break before that begins. You need to leave this event though and join using the relevant link. You'll find that in your joining instructions. These are repeated in the chat section today as well, so you can have a look at that now. You can join your breakout between now and they will start at 4:30. And finally, just please look out for the next series of Spotlight on Surrey events, and we all look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you.